Hey everybody, we're back with another Radio Star Murders. This time we're going to be continuing our topic, which was second singers. We're going to go with a band that was actually more successful after they fired their first singer, or at least more financially successful, I guess would be the best way to think about it if you want to argue the merits of art or commercial success. We're going to be talking about Genesis, No Son of Mine. Clay, how are you?
I'm good. I'm a little bit upset that you didn't just open with reciting the Phil Collins monologue from American Psycho.
Yeah. it's more timely and relevant to you with the Rotten Horror podcast about
That's
that.
true,
But
yeah.
I should
I
just
should-
play a
if-
clip
if
of
I-
him.
If I thought ahead, I only thought of it as we were doing this. I was like, oh, I should have pulled that up so I could have just read it when you threw it over to me. I blew it. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, this music video is a sepia-colored recount of basically what the lyrics are talking about, which is it's one of those videos where the band is sort of dancing around as, or maybe not dancing in this case. Phil Collins is wearing like a very nice vest while he's sitting around.
They're really lounging around in a living room. Most of the video.
I mean, they're fully into their dad rock territory at this point. They're under no delusions that they're like a grunge revivalist band or anything. They've been around since the 60s. They've seen it all. They've done it all. And now they're just going to wear a nice satin vest over a white button-down shirt and sing about sort of contemporary issues of the day. This is off their We Can't Dance album. I think it was the second single off of that. Maybe it was the first, but I Can't Dance is the big single off of it.
Final album with Phil Collins.
They didn't have one after this? No?
They had one more, but it was with a different singer, a third singer.
Okay.
The Gary Sharon of Genesis.
Yes. So, yeah, all right. I thought I guess that does make sense. He would have walked away at this point. Yeah, it's Genesis. They obviously, the reason that makes this is that they replaced Peter Gabriel to come in with Phil Collins, and then they actually had some commercial success at that point. I'm super unfamiliar with early Genesis, and I listened to some of it, and it's fine, I guess. It sounds... I was reading an article like Neil Peart was like really praising one of their albums, the recently passed away Neil Peart from Rush, and so I listened to it. I was like, Rush guys would probably like this. Like this is what Rush is probably listening to. I didn't really like it though. I certainly preferred this era of Genesis, even if I'm only familiar with the hits.
Yeah, I was the same. I was obviously aware of the Gabriel stuff, but I had never really gone on my way to listen to it. Mainly because knowing what Peter Gabriel is like as a solo artist, I thought, well, it's probably a lot like that, and it's not wrong. But it's the stuff that I listened to was very of the era prog wise. Like there was a lot of sounds. The prog music from the 70s. I feel like my only real exposure to that is Rush, Yes, and like Goblin.
Kansas.
I wouldn't even count Kansas. I don't know if you count Kansas, sure, but I think of like Goblin, the Italian band.
Sure.
And listening to Genesis, I heard all of those bands in this stuff, and it didn't feel really revolutionary or anything to me. It just felt like kind of 70s prog stuff.
Yep.
But I listened to two albums. I listened to Foxtrot, which I thought was kind of forgettable, even though that's known as one of their better ones. And I did listen to Selling England by the Pound.
Yeah.
I really liked that album. That one seemed like it had a lot more personality to it, and it was a little harder edged as far as the stuff they were talking about. And I really liked it. But
that's the one Peart was praising. That's the one he says it's a masterclass of drumming on that album. I only listened to
Phil Collins is a good drummer, man.
Yeah.
He doesn't get enough credit for being a good drummer. But yeah, they honestly, if you're talking about replacing your singer, I can't think of a band that had such a tonal shift after doing that than Genesis.
Yeah.
And it's not even immediate. It's not like as soon as Phil Collins moves from the drum seat to from the drum set to the microphone that they just changed their style. It's kind of an evolution, but it is very, very different.
Yeah, it is. It's obviously, comes along with, it starts to define what I consider to be the Genesis sound, which is this kind of thing. It's kind of that like new wavy synth influence on things with Phil Collins arena drum sounds. Like you can always tell Phil Collins drum fill because it's like very distinct, and he plays in a very specific way. Everyone knows obviously In the Air Tonight as that kind of thing, but it's very much that sort of sound and that kind of like delivery as his drum fills. as
It
opposed
sounds
to
like they recorded it in an empty like aircraft hangar or something.
yeah, and he's just like he loves space between hits. It's just
Right.
all like dun 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 dun. It's kind of that clambering stuff. Yeah, and he took over as basically one of the lead songwriters for them, obviously, and sort of had his pop sensibility. And Phil Collins is. I like Collins as a songwriter a lot of the time. I Don't Care Anymore. I like his like solo stuff. I like everything like that.
Sussudio.
Yeah, he's just he's an interesting, just clever, good pop writer who I think like in a lot of the best things about the best pop songwriters is there's kind of a sort of darker edge to things. Like there's something more interesting than just the kind of generic what you think of a pop song of like the 90s where people are kind of like you have people who are paid to write pop songs and they all come across as like the Miley Cyrus and stuff like that. Like people perform their songs that are written for them. He reminds me of Sting in a lot of ways, that it's this sort of
in that you don't really listen to his music, but you appreciate the fact that he's making it.
I guess that's true. Although I don't like solo Sting, but like Sting with the Police and stuff would be like, it's just a kind of there's just something more interesting going on this under the surface than what you think is going on. I think No Son of Mine is kind of that way too, because I think that there's a lot of ways to argue what this song is about. And that's what really interested me. And the reason that I chose it was because I think it's almost I'd be interested to hear what you think this song is about, because I think that there's multiple interpretations of what's going on here.
Well, I wasn't really familiar with it before we started this. So just watching the video and listening to the song, the video had a lot of influence on what I was taking from it. And it seemed to be about an abused boy who is more or less viewed as a disappointment to his overbearing father. And that's about where I got it from. Whether or not that's because of stuff that the kid has done in his life, or if it's a cyclical thing where his home life is causing him to lash out and do questionable things, which is then causing his home life to get worse. I don't know.
Yeah.
Or if it's just a song about abuse. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think it's good. I think it's an interesting song. Just because like the
do you play this? Do you play this like at your house all the time? And just stare?
I'm waiting for the day. I'm waiting for the day that I can unironically say this to somebody. He never says the word father in the song.
Sure.
Which is a really cool choice, I think. Makes a lot of sense. The chorus is basically this character going back. He runs away from home due to some kind of abuse situation. And then he comes back after a couple of years and he talks to his father. And his father sits him down and he says the only thing he says to him is that you're no son of mine. I think that there's an angle here that makes it more interesting to me, which is the post-chorus is how his words, how they hurt me, I'll never forget it. As the time it went by, I lived to regret it. What is he regretting in this situation? So is he regretting that he never will be able to forget? Is he regretting that he went back in the first place? Or is he regretting that he left in the first place? Because I think there's also a case to be made that he's not the one that suffers abuse in this, but it's his mother who's getting abused. And he runs away out of sort of not wanting to hear his mother be abused. And then when he goes back, he has this regret about whether or not he abandoned his mother, which is another interesting take about it. And because he mentions his mother by sort of, he mentions mother by name. He says mother, and he says he came back for help, came back for you. And I just, that adds a layer of the songwriting to me that's more than just like I was abused, I ran away, I came back, and my father was mean to me, and then I left. It's much more of like his choice to leave actually gets cast into doubt at that point. And I think that that's kind of a neat take on the song. That's a possible interpretation of it, I suppose.
Yeah. I think it also adds a layer of layer of interpretation. And it also kind of harkens back a little bit to In the Air Tonight, which is one of those songs where if you ask three people what it's about, they'll give you three different answers.
Yeah.
One of which was rumored that it was about a time that Phil Collins saw a car accident and a car drive into a river and he didn't do anything to stop the person from dying or something.
Yeah, well, isn't it? He saw the like unbelievable aspect is I thought he saw some guy he was in a car accident. He saw some guy not rescue someone who was drowning in a river, and then at a concert, that guy he saw the guy or something. It was like. He's like, there's the guy who didn't do it.
Pointed him out in the third balcony. That guy. But either way, the lines in the air tonight about if you told me you were drowning and wouldn't lend a hand, et cetera, et cetera. There is this element of being presented with some sort of trauma, and being a spectator with the option to do something, but you don't.
Yeah,
it's a really interesting point of view to come from for a pop song.
Yeah, it's somewhere in the air tonight. Like it's at least this song is similar to that in that it's kind of built around the emotional aspect of it rather than the kind of like nuts and bolts as to what went into that. Like in the air tonight, it's very much just like an angry song about something. Like you're clearly angry about something, and
most likely divorce.
Because who wouldn't have those feelings in that situation? And I just think that like No Son of Mine.
I'm thinking personally, if I ever feel like I'm in a creative rut, I'm just going to get divorced because all of the art that comes out of getting divorced is really incredible.
Yeah.
If you think about the stuff Phil Collins put out, I think Peter Gabriel's Salisbury Hill is about that. Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom is a product of Spielberg getting divorced. The Brood by David Cronenberg. It's an interesting. It seems to be a gold mine. So that'll be the second phase of my career. I'll get divorced and then channel that into my work.
Yeah, certainly. It's certainly fires you. I think of I think lawyers and lawsuits have an impact on that. Like
oh, totally. Yeah.
I love Tool's. Like, there's a lot of music examples of this, but like Tool's Lateralis was delayed by many years because they were in some sort of like contractual problem with their original label. And it's probably, if they're not their best, they're like second best album to come out of that. But a lot of it is just built around this like fucking lawyers, like God damn it.
Yeah.
And it gives you an edge to go into and stuff like that. I think No Son of Mine is. I'm always intrigued by songwriters who can write a story that is not autobiographical.
Sure. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like if I was a songwriter, I think 99% of my stuff would just be autobiographical in terms of like, there's some bands that are just storytellers about like what their life was like a lot of the time, or like recounting history and things like that. I don't think Phil Collins is this person. And my understanding of when they were writing the song is they compose music, and while they're playing, he says sort of nonsense phrases as a placeholder, and because he gets the melody while they're doing that, right. And then he goes in later and writes lyrics. And apparently the whole genesis of this, ironically, is that during the chorus, he was just saying the phrase "no son of mine" over and over for no particular reason. It was just something that came to him to say at that point. And then he wrote a song about it. I always find it interesting that some writers can just craft something like that from something that they're probably totally divorced from and actually make it interesting.
Yeah. I've heard stories like that too, and it is really amazing. Like there's one that I don't entirely believe, which was the Traveling Wilburys, the super group of Roy Orbison, Jeff Lynne, Bob Dylan, George Harrison, and Tom Petty. They were doing their song "Handle with Care," which was, I think, probably one of their two big hits. And George Harrison was talking about that song, and he's like, yeah, we didn't really have a name or a chorus for it. And then I happened to look over, and there was a package on the table that said "Handle with Care." And I was like, how about that? And they turned it into a multi-million-dollar song.
Yeah. What was that in, wasn't that apart from the Queen movie?
That was like half the Queen movie.
A lot of the Queen songs are apparently just like, just reading Kaiser Sozeing the name of the song off of something else.
Yeah.
I like this song. I think it's good. I think it's good Genesis stuff. I wouldn't say that I actively listen to Genesis or anything like that, but I think that there's, just for the reasons that we mentioned, I just enjoy this one. I think its first verse is fantastic. It's like maybe one of my favorite verses. Key to my survival was never much doubt. The question was how I could keep sane, trying to find a way out. Things were never easy for me. Peace of mind was hard to find. I needed a place where I could hide, somewhere I could call mine. It's almost like a little poem right there. It's good.
Arguably, one might say songs are poems with music behind them.
There is. Someone made that argument at some time. There's something. I have to think about that. I had more thoughts about whether poems can be songs or vice versa or something like that, but I don't think I can go off the cuff on it. You would say that they could be. Would all songs be poems?
Sure, why not? I don't have a hard stance on what does and doesn't constitute poetry. So
yeah, I think that poetry
if it rhymes, it counts as a poem to me.
Poetry to me is a little bit more invested in the structure of writing,
sure.
Sort of, where it's like it's more of a writing exercise than a emotional exercise in some levels. Like poems obviously have emotion tied to them, but like you don't have there's no way to be an E.E. Cummings as a lyricist and have it convey itself, like you can't just sort of do like weird things with font and spacing and stuff like that.
Sure, yeah.
I'll have more thoughts about that after I think about it. But what'd you think of the video for No Son of Mine?
It is very much of its time, it feels like. It's that style, that sepia tone thing. It honestly kind of feels almost like the video for Jeremy by Pearl Jam. It's not as what's the word? It's not as abstract and arty as that, but it has that same kind of feeling where it's very stark and there's lots of dramatic scenes sort of being interpolated. Yeah. And some interesting shots of taxidermied animals and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, it feels very much of its era, which I think is what, like 1991 or something?
Yeah, this would have been around 91. Yeah.
The kid looks a lot like a young Kiefer Sutherland, but it's not, because
he does.
At this point, Kiefer Sutherland is probably like in his 30s. But
yeah, no, he definitely does. Yeah, I think this is a case of the video actually does damage to the song in some ways.
It very much literalizes what you think the song is going to be about.
Yeah, and it's one of those, it just doesn't age well. Like there's no way to look at this and be like, this is not a product of its time, really. It's, I think that songs like this are difficult to make music videos. Like any song that is purely emotional, I guess you could do In the Air Tonight, but In the Air Tonight is so abstracted where it's just like filters on an image. It's just like sort of like we're going to add saturation to the 10 and then take out all the contrast and stuff like that.
This is kind of like the video for Janie's Got a Gun.
Yeah.
Where there's a specific thing that they're talking about, but they're not being absolutely literal visually as to what's going on.
Yep.
Where the difference is the song's a little more abstract. Janie's Got a Gun is fairly specific about what's happening.
Yeah.
But the visuals are really sort of circling around, and in that case,
literally.
Yeah, in that case, literally, thanks to Mr. Bay.
This one too. The camera's doing a lot of circling in this one around the kid while he's sitting in the chair.
Janie's Got a Gun might have been David Fincher. I can't remember. I don't remember. I think it might have been David Fincher. But anyway, yeah, it's. I'm all these other videos keep popping into my head because now I'm watching it as we're talking, and I'm sort of like in that 2 minutes in where the lights start flashing and stuff, which feels kind of like almost like REM, like Losing My Religion a little bit.
Yeah.
So it just seems like a very contemporary video.
Yeah, this is it's one of the videos that, to me, like as we've been doing the show, the problem that I have with it is that I start to see the music videos. I'm having a hard time viewing the music videos as anything more than ads 99% of the time. Like it's not really the thing that interests me about the topic that it is. Like the music is clearly the more interesting thing, and the music video is just kind of a way to get your song onto a new medium, which is television, because you have to have a visual that's attached to it. And to me, like in some cases, it's just interesting what damage that does to the song in some ways, and other times it doesn't do any damage. Sometimes it's actually helpful, but I think I would say that like 60% of the time the video probably damages what I feel about the song, because I'm watching it going like, this is, interesting, or like this wasn't what I was interpreting, or this is just so dated, like it really puts it in a different context for me. This is kind of that way. This isn't the worst video that I've ever seen, but I don't like the band. I just can't. I have a hard time not looking at a video like this and feeling how artificial it is for the band to be standing around performing their song for a video structure.
Right.
You know, like if I was in the band, if we were in a band and you wrote this song, it feels like it's too odd to me to have to pretend to be literalizing the song that you made. It feels like it lessens the song in some ways. And I think that this video kind of does that to me. And it'd be a problem I would have if I was a band and we had to make a video. I would just go completely abstract nonsense stuff with it, because I think that that's the only way to preserve what the song is in some way.
Well, I think what's interesting is this period was where you were getting more videos like this, where the topics that the songs were covering were kind of darker and more serious. And so I think a lot of these videos were trying to make a point, or not make a point, but
well, I think that's down to the song, right? Because I don't have this problem with the Misfits song, because the Misfits song is not really about a real thing. There's like no emotional core. It's just kind of the idea of like, I love this woman, I'm going to dig up her bones later on. And the video kind of represents that. So it doesn't do any damage. But here, seeing Phil Collins like feign to be emotional on the stairs, you know, is like, this is kind of like, you're not an actor, Phil Collins. I don't want to see you dramatically represent what you're doing.
He was on Miami Vice.
Was he actually in the show?
He was. He played a game show host. He might have been on more than one episode. I can't remember. But I don't disagree with you. But I think at this time, they were doing a lot more of this for some reason. Whether or not the kind of songs that were being put out were dealing with more intense stuff, or I don't know if that was the case or what. But videos, I think they started to try, and coming off of it's 1991. So coming off of the 80s, I think there was probably a push to make music videos feel like they're more than just poison sticking their crotch into a camera.
Live, more than live footage of the band. Like a narrative is stuck to it.
Right, because you've got like I said, Jeremy, although Jeremy's a little bit later. Janie's Got a Gun. Just had it in my head. Runaway Train by Soul Asylum. Is that
Soul Asylum? Yeah.
Soul Asylum. Which literally at the end has pictures of missing kids.
Soul Asylum. Sorry, didn't mean. Soul Asylum is a great band name. It's a very good band name. Yeah.
You got Right Now, which we might be covering shortly.
Mm-hmm.
But you've got this push, it seems, to turn music videos into more than just a performance. I assume you've got these young directors who are want to make it more of a statement than just filming a band playing with explosions or something.
Yeah.
You've got some more artsy people doing stuff. The guy who did Losing My Religion, I believe, is a fairly well-known art filmmaker. I can't remember his name, unfortunately.
Yeah. I'm fine with that. That one seems more like a music video is what I would go for.
That one's a lot more abstract.
Yeah,
like that one. Yeah, that one is not as much of a narrative story as this one is trying to be. But I think they were trying this in different ways at the time. Is what I'm
I think it's funny because what you know from television and like what anyone or film or like what anyone in television or film, so working from a visual, adding an auditory aspect to it, they always go, you can't pick a song that literally represents what the scene is about because it seems so stupid when you just combine the two of them. But for some reason, music videos didn't realize that. They're like, we need to literalize what this song is about so people get it. And I think that is equally bad for the song in a lot of cases.
Yeah, like if you took this song and you instead played it over a compilation of shots from Bambi, I think it would work just as well.
Is that Bambi's mother's last words? That's particularly heartbreaking at that point.
Or Dumbo, even. Anything where there's a son ripped from a mother who's being abused by an external force, I think it would be great.
There's a tweet that had a quote from
Kubrick. Sorry, before you get into that, though.
Yeah.
At the same time, I guess for a song like this, you would have to go, if you're not going to do something like this, I feel like you would have to go more abstract, because I can't think of another Like, could you think of another story that you would tell, like narratively in a music
No.
video, that you
No.
put this on and it doesn't feel wildly out of place?
Yeah, I mean, you're kind of limited in, because the song is such a narrative, you kind of have to follow that,
Yeah.
otherwise it doesn't make any sense. But at the same time, like, honestly, I think the biggest part is I don't like to see the band members acting. I don't like to see.
Sure.
I don't like to see the character. Like,
But you know what, though? I think Phil Collins loves to see himself acting.
he probably does. I mean, he doesn't look like the kind of person who should be comfortable on camera, but he seems to have no problem being like powder my forehead a little bit.
Only one person on television can get away with that haircut, and his name is Fraser Crane.
He does have a very Fraser Crane haircut. I think that's
or Doc Brown. Doc Brown had a similar hair.
It just feels like it's too much of the band celebrating the emotion of their song. You know what I mean? When I feel like the band should not really do that. If you had a bunch of actors and a director doing it, that seems okay to me. But the band being there, being like, this is the part of the song where I'm sad. Like, I wrote a sad lyric here, and I don't like that at all.
What about a music video like that D'Angelo video, where it's just him,
the naked
singing
one,
singing into the camera, where it looks like possibly something's going on underneath the belt. Just being real sexy for the camera while something sexy might be happening.
I like that, because that is that has nothing to do with that song, but that's the iconography that people remember from it. Right. It'll be a sexy song, but I think that's a better music video than any of the best narrative videos that you're ever going to have, because people remember that video. That's like there's some incredible cropping that they did later on there to make that fit in frame.
Yeah.
I just like a distinction and stuff there. Like, I'd say that this is a worse music video than the Misfits one, even if the Misfits one is more generic. It's just like I'm less distracted by it, and I think if I was a band member, I'd want to be not distracted.
I think they are, to compare those two videos, I think they have very different aims, because I think the Misfits video is very much a reintroduction to the band, and you're trying to get across, like, this is the vibe of the Misfits, this is kind of what they're about.
Yep.
This is very much not that. This is very much a established band who take themselves a little bit too serious, probably.
Yep.
Singing a very serious song in a very serious lighting scheme.
Yep. Yeah. I'd agree. I do like it.
It's interesting. It's interesting that they, compared to the way Peter Gabriel went, you've got stuff like this, which is a nice narrative story song that is just abstract enough to be intriguing and emotional without hitting you over the head with it, and a very literal video. But then you've got stuff Peter Gabriel was doing where he's much more abstract in both ways, whether it's musically, and although his music lyrically, he's not as abstract as I kind of always expect him to be. Mm-hmm. I do feel like an idiot because it only recently in the last couple of years occurred to me that Sledgehammer is just a song about fucking.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why it never occurred to me. I guess I just assumed that Peter Gabriel was a little bit higher minded than that. Could you? It's just so strange to me to go see like a Peter Gabriel concert and hear him do like Biko, which is a song, like a big political statement of a song, and then follow it up with like a total dick down like Sledgehammer.
Yeah, it's that was probably just driven by the influence of that Motown thing that he was doing on that one. Yeah, but that's a good example of the video, obviously being a totally abstracted thing from whatever's going on in the song.
Right, and is probably more famous than, equally famous as the song, I would say.
Yeah. Did I have something else to say about this? No, I don't think so. Although this song does bring up a favorite topic of mine, which is always a topic of debate between me and my wife, about the importance.
Which son is yours?
the importance of blood ties to things. Mm-hmm. I'm always super interested by. My in-laws have a family that is like fraught with strife, right? Mm-hmm. But they constantly try to hold each other closer. to like they try to bring the family together all the time, and when they get brought together, they all fight with each other, and then they splinter apart again. And I'm always I have no such like traumatic or no such like confrontational thing with my family, but at the same time, I always feel that there's this weird societal pressure on both sides to go back and make amends with an abusive family member for some reason that I never really understand. Like, I don't think you owe blood family anything, really. You know, you owe your parents it to some level, but
I think generally, I would say it's more for your own peace of mind.
Right.
You know, it's not,
if it's unhealthy for you.
Right. Yeah. If the anger you're holding on to and the resentment is healthy for you, then it's probably good to try and smooth that over. And also, it's like, you know, family is family. Even if your parents, if you're mad at your father and your father dies without you ever really burying the hatchet, that is probably going to stick with you unless, you know, it's more likely going to stick with you than it won't. I'm not saying that it's right or wrong either way. Yeah. Because it is a very personal thing. But it doesn't surprise me that when it comes to family, there is that desire to want to kind of mend things over and not just write people off, obviously.
But I think a lot of go ahead.
I have noticed that the people, a lot of times, the more fraught the situation, the more desperate that they can families can be to pull together, which then ultimately blows it up again. So it's a tough situation.
I think it's just my approach would just be like, for genuinely abusive things, I don't think you really owe people anything. That there's like the character here is like, I have to go back and talk to him. And I think that a lot of cases in that situation, your desire for change is going to run into your father, who has not changed, and he's going to say something like, "You're no son of mine," and so you haven't really gained anything by going. You feel that there's this obligation for you to go back and try to make amends for some reason, but probably the vast majority of the time, that person is going to be the same, and you're just going to re-upset yourself like this narrator did by going back. Yeah. Like, now I regret doing this in the first place. And
yeah, I think you gotta, if it's weighing on you that much, though, I think you have to at least try. At least that way you'll know, you know?
That's true. You could, you not going back, you could always be like, well, I wonder if he was sad about the whole time. Maybe he's just proving my point by going back and having his father be a douchebag to him.
Yeah. But like, do you ever see the movie Warrior with Tom Hardy and
no,
Nick Nolte? Man, you want to see a movie about fathers and sons that'll get you? Watch that movie.
Affliction too. Nick Nolte's Affliction movie was the same thing.
Nick Nolte seems to have the market cornered on assholes trying to make amends, I guess. But yeah, no. Warrior is very much a shattered family with a father who is trying to make amends, but the children just aren't having it, and it's a really it's that mixed with a cage fighting story. So it's a good guy movie. Let's put it that way. It is. And I don't mean that to like say, you know, certain women or whoever might not like it, but it's like, I've never seen a more guy movie where it's about two brothers and a father. Yeah. Two brothers and a father. Both brothers are cage fighters who are then, you know, both entered into this tournament where they ultimately have to fight each other. Spoilers. And in the middle of this is a father who's trying to make amends for treating the sons. It's like a very, very much
an emotional cage fight as well as a physical.
Every guy I know who has seen this movie mention it as a movie that has made them cry. So it's definitely like aiming for that, you know, father and son. People who might not emote about that stuff generally, it's aiming to shatter those people. So. Right. And apparently works.
I'll have to check it out. I've been watching a lot of MMA videos on YouTube for no particular reason, just because they're popping up with some frequency. But I'll have to check it out, because I can have an emotional cage fight of my own and then take it somewhere else, I suppose. All right, we're done with No Son of Mine. We'll be back with a new music video after this in a couple weeks' time. I haven't picked one out, or you haven't picked one out, I don't think, unless you have. You can say it.
I think I would like to go with Right Now by Van Halen.
All right. Sounds good. So we'll be back with Right Now by Van Halen, but not right now, in a couple days or a couple weeks maybe. Guys, thank you very much for listening. We'll see you next time.